Good morning. Welcome to the Decision Analysis Partners webinar on responding to changing and declining volume in delivery operations. My name is Nolan Hargrave. I'm the CEO of PKG Consulting, also known as the Postal Knowledge Group. What we're going to look at today is a revisit to city delivery. There's not a lot of automation available that impacts delivery operations, and with the changes in mail volumes, we thought we'd revisit some of the things, the back-to-basics approach to capturing the savings in the changes of these volume changes in delivery operations. We're going to look at identifying those specific opportunities that are there that you may have missed or maybe sitting out there just waiting to be addressed. We're going to look a lot at back to basics, those things in city delivery, the events and the processes that and steps you need to take to get back to ensuring you have the adequate staff and a plan in place to capture these deliveries. We're going to make specific recommendations, and we're going to look at that on a short and a long-term approach. And finally, we're going to look at the bottom line. Currently, and I'm sure that most of you are aware, if not all of you, that around the world, major postal operations, there's been a shift in the type of mail that's coming in over the dock. There's been decline in first-class mail, and with automation coming in, there's been a decline in residual or casing mail. But on the other side of the equation, when you start looking at the street portion of city delivery, you're looking at growth out on the street, new construction, new apartment buildings, and new businesses. And, you know, when you talk about the decline, you're going to see some graphics in some following slides that shows the dramatic changes in the last 10 years, 20 years on what kind of handle volume is actually getting to the delivery operation. This chart shows data from the United States Postal Service that shows that the volume decline is incredibly dramatic in over 8.4 billion pieces of mail less than the prior year. And I think it's important to look at the percentage change of 5%. Mail volume in itself is declining. What that means is that the average mail volume delivered per address, or your pieces per possible delivery, have declined 3.5, and so that street cost is still there. If you look at the increase for the United States Postal Service for delivery addresses out on the street, it's increased 650,000 over the same period last year. And those come with fixed costs for vehicles and employees and equipment. The first thing that our experience has shown is that as an organization, you need to validate the data that flows from the bottom up from your, not only your plan, but all of your operations. When we look at the data, and again, we need to be looking at all the data, the work hours, and define it as regular work hours, overtime work hours, the absences that relate from scheduled and unscheduled can have a dramatic impact on overtime and regular work hours. You need to look at what kind of mail is coming through the back door, and look at the volumes in categories by type. One of the things that's left out of the delivery equation, especially for an organization that's making some business decisions now, and business decisions like in the private sector relate to actual cost. Fuel usage is going up as it should if you are increasing more possible deliveries out on the street, but it's something that has to be monitored and monitored closely. One of the things we suggest is once you start validating your data, and let me back up a minute. To validate your data, you need to go out and go onto the workroom floor and look at all the elements, how the process is working. I've spent time in several plants recently. We've had people who forget to sign in, people who forget to sign out, other people swiping in for other people. And so when we say validate your data, you have to make sure that you have to go down onto the workroom floor. We also want you to start gathering this data as you start looking in trends over the last few weeks and the last few months. And like I said, when we go, I've been out on the floor with my team around the world looking at timekeeping, and it's something that tends to fall through the cracks, but it's one of the things that this garbage in, garbage out type of a situation, you need to make sure that the data that you're looking at is valid and reflects what's really happening in delivery operations. Once you have collected this data, the one thing that we suggest, and the whole point of all of this is that you identify your vital few. We're not looking at every operation. You can't eat an elephant at one setting, as the saying goes. So what we want you to do is, from your data that you've validated, you identify your vital few opportunities. You should look at excessive work hours to either budgeted hours or same period last year work hours. You should look at excessive overtime. I think that's, it's been in the media recently that the United States Postal Service is paying overtime into the billions of dollars, which is a high cost, obviously, for the Postal Service. You need to look at excessive unscheduled absences, your leave policy, your leave program, and the key here is unscheduled. It's your sick leave program. One of the things that we found out recently in a plant operation that had high overtime was that the employees were calling in sick on the first day of their worst work week and were paid sick leave, understanding and knowing that by the end of the week they're still going to get overtime. You need to look at increased labor tension because it relates to people who perhaps are overworked. There's a disparity sometime on who gets overtime and who doesn't. And labor tension drives productivity, it drives accidents, it drives a lot of unacceptable behavior. And again, I want to repeat, excessive fuel and vehicle maintenance costs. So as you look at the vital few, that's one of the key benchmarks that you should look at and share with your delivery operation. Increased customer complaints. It's been in the media a lot lately that there are a significant amount of carriers that are reported out after work. There's been a lot of complaints in the media about missed deliveries. Tired people who are working excessive overtime may not be providing the quality product that they should be. But one of the elements to look at and tie into your vital few is there increased customer services complaints? And you should look in declines of automated volume. One of the things that we're going to discuss later on is that if you have sequence letter mail, if you have sequence flat mail, and the volume is declining, is the residual volume going up? And we'll get into that in just a few minutes. Quality. One of the things we've seen recently by visiting operations is that routes who have an expectation of a certain percentage of automated mail, it's declining in the quality, whether it's the actual AMS sortation plan, the address management system plan, or sweeping errors or transportation problems. There seems to be declines in automation quality, something you need to revisit. For the organization itself, you need to have a corporate strategy. If it's important to the headquarters postal operation, it becomes important to the field. You have to make at the national level or at an area level a commitment of resources. You have to have subject matter experts. And this makeup of subject matter experts has to be people who are proven leaders who have demonstrated the ability to identify opportunities and to change those opportunities. You need time. You need to set the time aside, which equates to money. In the private sector, they'll tell you, you have to spend money to make money. You have to have a hands-on approach. It can't become, and we've seen this many times in the past, the program du jour. It has to be where there's a commitment that we're going to go out, identify these savings, we're going to spend the time, we're going to commit the resources, and we're going to be an active participant in capturing these savings. On the other side of the equation, you have the vital few. One can assume that if the numbers show that an operation is failing in a variety of the elements we looked previously in the categories used to identify the vital few, that if they have been failing for a while, they either don't have the ability to fix it, or they don't have the desire and support to fix it. One of the things that, as you approach these vital few, local managers, area managers have to support and make a commitment that the company's going to spend this money and that we're going to do everything we can to get back on track. One of the things that we're looking at for the vital few, there's going to be productivity improvements. We have spent a lot of time with several postal organizations outside the United States where productivity really isn't measured. It's not allowed to be measured. But there are ways around that to make better business decisions, and we'll talk about that. The expectation is we're going to spend this money, your service is going to improve. The customers are going to see a, quote, better postal service, unquote. And the bottom line is workout reduction and an overall reduction in operating costs. And we're going to talk about how do we get to each one of these elements. We're going to take a team approach. I would highly suggest that you not send one or two people, but that the team has to be made up of different elements based upon the needs of the particular operation that you're looking at. There has to be coaching and mentoring, which is a learned skill. Someone has to go in and provide leadership and provide the direction. And coaching and mentoring is key to all of this, so that after the team leaves or after at a certain period of time, the local unit has the ability and the skills to continue to capture the savings. The training is something that kind of falls through the cracks, especially when revenue is declining. A lot of organizations, the first thing that they take out is training. And that's the one thing that as you approach the vital few, we have to revisit and take a look at the training. Does it support good delivery operations? So when we talk about our review team, if it's a delivery operation, it will probably be a large organization. If it has an automation, if it gets automated mail, you'll want the team to have subject matter experts from both delivery and the plant. Key to all of this, and it's something that also, again, falls through the cracks, is that if it's a poor running operation, HR and labor relations can be an absolute valuable member of this team. Because if you're going in to change behavior, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. Guidance should come from HR and labor relations by being part of the review team itself. So someone from transportation and vehicle. If the mail arrives late from the plant, or there's problems, the equipment that they're using to transport the mail, it impacts delivery, and many times it has a negative impact. And we have found a lot of postal operations where the trucks don't have while they may have a scheduled arrival time, they don't meet that schedule on a consistent basis. And if you have in your organization a support function, those folks should also be active participants. And obviously, decision analysis partners and PKG Consulting, we are outside postal subject matter experts. We have on our team people from every element of any postal operation: delivery, plant, HR, finance, maintenance, automation, anything that you can imagine. We have subject matter experts available to help you. And one of the things that we bring in is that we are unbiased. We don't report to headquarters. We don't have a hidden agenda. We're here. We literally put our hearts on our sleeve and we come in to help. We're results motivated. If you hire us to come in and help you, and I should qualify that to tell you that it's not our job, nor will we come in and run your operations for you. We are there to help you, to assist you, to motivate you. And if we don't do a good job, you won't bring us back. The best practices, that's one of the things we have stolen from all over the world. The postal operations that we have visited all tend to look basically the same. There's a standard way to collect and process and deliver mail. And so we look for best practices, and we can bring those. We steal them all the time and share them with our clients. One of the things, once you get into your vital few, you need to start baselining. You need to have an idea: is it getting better? Is it getting worse? What is the status quo? And we look at, again, miles driven or kilometers driven versus a base. That's assuming that you have a base. One thing to appreciate that we have found in several postal operations around the world in discussions with carriers and observation is that letter carriers look at vehicles as free transportation, free gas, because they don't pay for it. While they may have a credit card to purchase gas, they don't pay a credit card bill. The vehicle is utilized many, many times that we have seen in appropriate manners. So there needs to be a good hard look in delivery operations in conjunction with transportation and vehicles to monitor and start developing a real hard look in these times, especially with the cost of fuel, as to the miles driven. Are they justified? And if you can, there's a lot of ways to collect the data. Some of it's automated. Can you do it by the driver? Can you do it by the route? You need to start looking at volumes by mail type. And when you say, is it handled versus automated, handled being case mail, is your parcel post, is it going up? Is it going down? Is it changing? I know eBay, we've seen the impact of eBay in several postal organizations, and it's pretty dramatic, as well as within the state priority type mail. This next one is something that you have to look at the value of the data that you're looking at. Every organization on the private sector, we visited several of them recently, and I spent some time in a corporate office looking at McDonald's, talking about productivity. How do you do it? In the private sector, because they are running a business, they know, for example, every single outlet that they have, how many packs of sugar do they have? How many straws do they give away? How many napkins should they have? They know what the staffing is based upon hours of the day, days of the week, weeks of the year. And so they monitor that, and they make projections, and they monitor the cost. They don't overstaff, they don't understaff based upon data. So the question then becomes, do you measure and track delivery productivity in the office and the street? Can you do it by route and by carrier? If you can't, because of contractual, you can't do it by route and carrier, can you do it by the unit itself? That'll be a good indication, at least if you're comparing several delivery units, you can gather that data, because productivity really is what drives cost savings in the delivery unit. Is there a plan? a work hour plan, and not only is there a work hour by day or by week, but do local managers know what the plan is? Is it a reasonable plan? Was delivery operations part of the process developing the plan, or were they just given the plan and by finance? Part of what has to happen when you look at productivity, does the unit manager get feedback? And how is it? Is it by phone, email? Do they have visits? Recently, we were in a large postal delivery operation, and I asked that specific question to the unit manager, and it was a very poor running operation. And the gentleman said that my boss was here recently. He stayed here 15 minutes. He went back to his office, sent me an email that said I needed to mow the grass in the front of the building. That tells you right there about where the problems lie in that particular office. You start looking at the percent for the work hour plan, percent of overtime use. That's key to all of this, because remember, to many to line supervisors in a delivery organization, the overtime hour is the same as a regular hour. They don't see the dollar cost to it. They have to deliver the mail, and they're not really active participants in making business decisions on what is this going to cost me or cost the organization to do that. So overtime is a big theme. And the percent of sick leave, like we talked about earlier. When we look at numbers, if you're gathering the data locally or at a higher level, are local managers involved to say, do they get projections that say next week we expect this kind of mail, this type of mail, and these kind of volumes, and then let's take a look at your workload. Are they active participants in this? In some organizations, they're not. And again, when you talk about performance analysis, do they react to what the volume change is? In many organizations, we have, because of lack of motivation, lack of training skills, delivery operation skills, they're just concerned about getting the mail out at any cost. Now, because of the decline in revenue and the decline in volume, your organization has to take a real hard look at daily scheduling, awareness of workload, and the availability and the use of work hours. And really, the bottom line is, especially for a delivery operation during these critical times, how many work hours should we be using based upon today's workload? I know an evaluated route system, like they have in Canada Post and from European and from other countries, they can't respond to that as well. For those of you who may be having or considering an evaluated route system, there's very few options, and I've spent a lot of time talking to delivery managers on the floor, an evaluated system that says, if I am declining, dramatic 25%, what can you do? Many times their hands are tied. However, at a minimum, if you are in an evaluated route system, you take a look and review of all overtime usage. Was it justified? And there are times when it is. But I'm not sure that the delivery supervisors that we talked to, they didn't make a business decision. They made a decision based on the cost of overtime. They made a decision based upon, I have to get all the mail delivered, so I'm going to call or use overtime. Staffing reviews. You come in, especially if you have high overtime usage, you come in and perform a staffing review. Do they have the people available and the flexibility to respond to these changes in volumes? The use of sick leave reviews. That's one of the things that HR can provide dramatic positive support for, because the use of sick leave has been defined in every contract we've ever seen. If the managers follow procedures in the contract and the handbook and manual, it can be used as an effective tool to improve delivery operations. Street and vehicle management. That's one of the things that all of you know. It's hard to get people out on the street, supervisors. We have provided in many delivery organizations, there are computer platforms that now have to be cared for and fed by supervisors, and instead of managing people, they're managing data. You need to visit that, and to do that, the purpose of that is to get people out on the street. And the same question, if you go out on the street, it's not where do you find a particular carrier at a particular time. The question is where should they be based upon what time they left today. Vehicle usage. Recently, I videotaped 4 carriers at a Home Depot with 3 different large vehicles loading lumber in the back of it. Those are the types of things that there is an inherent cost to that, in addition to public relations. When you take a look, especially in your evaluated route system, and even if you don't, you need to look at your existing route measurement process. Is it fair to the organization? Does it reflect changes in casing equipment, increases in automated mail? And we have available time and motion and engineering studies that we can provide to you that uses video cameras, software, and time and motion studies, time stamping to redevelop and revisit what does it actually cost now, what is the averages for casing into this new modern casing equipment or into cases with reduced volumes of mail. So these are some things that on the route measurement system, and what we have found in several organizations is that at the headquarters level of both the unions and management, there's a reluctance to do this because it is going to, if you do it properly, and there are tremendous savings available when you start taking a look at this, and it's built in, and it's a forever saving, is that you have managers that are resistant to this, you have employees and carriers who are resistant to that. However, times are changing, volumes are declining, and revenue. You have to make sure that the commitment of 8 hours work, of 8 hours pay is fair to both the organization and the employees. One of the things that we look at in the long term, and it's something that surfaced recently, and I'll explain that in a minute. Do you have an analysis of the cost per delivery point by unit? In other words, do you know in your vital few, what does it cost the organization to deliver mail to each one of your delivery points? And if so, is it higher in one and less in another? Why? What could you do to reduce the cost to your delivery by point? High-cost delivery, once you've reviewed them and identified them, you get into a situation like, for example, I've been in several malls recently where letter carriers pull up to the dock, get out, put their mail into rolling carts, or some of them we saw actually loaded their satchel and walked to several hundred stores inside and air conditioned while the music was playing, going from door to door to door. We have seen other organizations or other malls where they have centralized delivery. And part of that is to implement that, you have to visit with the mall owners, the mall managers, and the individual stores themselves, with the understanding that they are running a business, we are, or you are running a business. Malls are a great opportunity. Do you have a centralized delivery requirement? In today's world, in the operations that we've visited, most of the organizations do. Any new growth, with the exception of fill-ins, do get centralized delivery. I have been working recently, I was asked to participate in a think tank in Washington, D.C. on the cost of the modes of delivery. And by far, the most expensive way to deliver mail is park and loop, where the letter carrier takes the vehicle, parks on the street, gets out of the vehicle, loads their satchel, and then goes out and walks in a loop and returns to the vehicle, hits another loop, or moves on. This is by far the most expensive and the most prevalent around the world. the number of vehicles supporting this is very dramatic when you compare it to a centralized delivery type operation. One of the things that we found in talking to human resources and safety people and several organizations is that over 80% of all accidents, reportable accidents in city delivery, come from slip, trips, and falls. We all know that your carriers are dedicated. In the wintertime, even though they're told not to go up icy steps, they'll approach such a situation, grandma standing at the top of the step, the carrier will up it, slip and fall, accidents happen. It was, if you, and it's the conversion of high-cost delivery, that is going to be a webinar because it is incredibly involved. However, the savings potential is for billions and billions of dollars, and we can open up that conversation at a different time. Now, when we look at the casing equipment, and I have two of these here, and I was involved in both of these. The one on the left is in an organization, is in a delivery unit that had both sequence letters and sequence flats. On a Monday, which is typically your high volume day in delivery, after the carrier encased up the mail, there were 75 pieces of residual mail that actually went into the case. It begs the question, do you need two pieces of equipment for that? If you look at the picture on the right, you see me with one of the engineers from Canada Post, and we were doing some analysis on casing sequence mail into their new casing equipment, which they are expanding across Canada. If you have standards, obviously, that were developed in the 30s for the case on the left, and you're implementing cases on the right, have you performed an engineering study, a time and motion study to re-establish your standards? And if you haven't, obviously, that's the one thing that we have available to provide for you. Reduce case volumes. And the other part of it is, and this is old school, this is the real back to basics. Is there a corporate goal for operation standardization? The one thing that we discovered in one organization going from coast to coast looking at 20 different delivery operations was that how unique each one of them were. They used different equipment to move the mail, they had different trays, they performed it, the bottom line, they ended up delivering it. But what we found is that there was no standardization. And that really limits the use of best practices. And so, for those of you who remember, we did the old model delivery office or model delivery unit, is that there should be a long-term corporate goal to standardize your delivery operation. At the corporate level, we suggest you make the statement, this is what delivery is going to look like. Because if it works in one place, it should work in another. And again, remember, there is resistance to change, and it's something that you have to be very forceful about. I said earlier, one of the things that we've been looking for is training, and supervisors training. I've spent 5 years in an organization recently, going from, like I said, coast to coast, talking to line supervisors. I asked HR, I asked the corporate office, I asked everyone, can I see your supervisor training handbook? Everybody said, I'm sure we had one, but nobody could find one, and which we found very frustrating. And that contributes to everybody doing the same thing a different way. What is key in the supervisor training is difficult times require skilled managers. How do you know the abilities of your line supervisors and line managers to implement change, to identify opportunities? How do you know that if they haven't been trained? Do you measure the skill level of your delivery managers? And I know this is a sensitive issue. You don't have to do it by individual. You can do it by category of supervisor. Have them take a test I'm a firm believer our organization supports testing to ensure comprehension. And then you have to do follow-up to see if what they were trained is in actual practice out on the workroom floor. And have you done so recently? How do you know? Have you taken a hard look at it? Many times training comes out of the training department in HR, which may not drive the behavior that you need. Are your training programs updated and current? And my question is, how do you know? How do you know that? Because we went out and we found, when we did find in a different organization some handbooks, they were from the 60s. Key to all of your supervisor's training is, does it support addressing poor or unacceptable behavior? That's confrontation, or viewed as confrontation in many organizations. However, you need to have the ability to not only, this is where the coaching and mentoring comes in, you have to have the skills to go out and change that behavior. And one of the things that we've found is you have to make sure that you involve human resources in the training. You have to have labor relations people to tell supervisors or be active participants in the training that says, if you've identified that Nolan's the problem in this particular area, how do you motivate, how do you change it so that we can support whatever actions that you do? Because if you go and you approach someone and talk about their behavior, it becomes very personal. And when it becomes personal, they can respond and they can file grievances. Obviously, they can turn to violence, which we don't want. But if you're proactive in involving HR and labor relations in the training, I think what you'll find is you'll have a better product. You'll have a better process. And the 3 R's. 3 R's. Does your training program encourage the managers to do the right thing at the right time in the right way? That's an assumption that it does, but in many cases we've had supervisors do the right thing the wrong way with all the best intentions. It blows up in their face, and they become reluctant to even address performance in the future. We have to look at AMS. I spent a lot of time recently walking routes looking at AMS, address management data, to support whatever automation program that you have. And what we found in our initial reviews in one organization was we were told by very large delivery units that, yes, we've counted every delivery point, our line of travel is fine, we've got it all cleared. We went out on the street and found an error rate over 50%. And because they hadn't done it in the street, they had done it in the office. And we found many delivery points that weren't in the AMS database, that the carrier had just written it on their case labels and in it goes, which doesn't support automation. We found carriers who did not match the line of travel. They pulled the mail out of their case differently prior to automation because I just like carrying it this way. You can't do that, obviously, when you automate your letter mail or your flat mailing. And this next bullet really supports that. And part of when you talk about AMS and street management, we talked about it earlier, your supervisors have to go out on the street and talk to their people. They have to manage them out there. Growth management, customer services, and good safety practices. I don't have the secret to get them out on the street. I wish I did. I can design a program to tell you exactly how to do it, when to do it, and how to track it. But we've always found a resistance from people to go out and do that. Under growth management, are you proactive? And again, this is under the long-term part of it. Are you proactive in dealing with new construction? Do you promote centralized delivery? When we went out on several routes, we found abandoned, and actually we found 4 72-unit apartment buildings that had been torn down for 10 years that was still in the EMS database, generating mail from the mailers that was being thrown away. Are you involved in assigning and improving new addresses? Are you proactive in that? We found situations where there were duplicate street names all over the place because locally they didn't want to get involved with it. For your motorized routes, again, I'm repeating what I said earlier because it's that critical on the long term. Do they have base miles or base kilometers? And do they track it? And is feedback provided and attention given to those people who cannot justify the distances they drove on a particular day or a particular week? And are your vehicles maintained to ensure the best fuel usage? My question on that bullet is, how do you know? Do you talk to people in vehicle operations? Is there analysis done that shows you the miles per gallon or kilometers per liter that show you exactly what the difference is between the same type of vehicle in a delivery operation? And whether you contract it out or you have your vehicle facilities, that's something, because now times are tough, revenue is down. We have to watch this. So like I said about McDonald's, they go out and they do spot audits and they look and they monitor every element of their operation. And are you having the right vehicle on the right route? And by that, there's been changes in mail volume. Parcels may be up. Priority mail type volumes may be up. Is the vehicle that you're using best for that particular change in volume? And again, how do you know? You have to go out and visit, videotape, take pictures, whatever the case may be. You need to increase the use of automation, and if you haven't, this is for any organization that hasn't done it. I don't have to sell automation. The picture on the left is the old MPLSM, and obviously it was the state of the art, but that was in 1970. To do this increase in automation, it's a repeat AMS. For those of us who've been around sequencing and delivery point sequencing, AMS is the number one element to drive an effective automation program. One of the things that we suggest, and one of the things we ask you to focus on, is if you're in an automated environment, stop looking at your automation. You get a piece count from the machines. That'll tell you exactly what's coming across the dock. What you should be looking at is to survey the levels of case volume that's coming in. And if you're looking at that case volume, if it's going up or down, you have to ask the question, why wasn't this letter size now, for example, why wasn't it in delivery sequence? Quality control checks. You have to get quality control involved, the plant, and so forth. But focus on what's costing delivery the most, and that is the actual casing of mail. Here is the bottom line. One, make sure your data is correct. Identify opportunities for improvement based on the biggest bang for your buck. You have to make sure that you make decisions. There's not a 4-route office in the world that can be bad enough to compete with a large delivery organization that is work hours that are 10% over their same period last year or budget. So look for your biggest bang for your buck. And you do that by looking at work hours and the cost per delivery. You assemble your qualified team. And that takes, like I said earlier, that takes support, that takes direction. This team has to be one that can come in and assist and be part of the solution. And that's really the key to any review team. Are you part of the solution? Not to come in and say, here's what you're doing wrong, but here's what we're going to be doing to fix all of this. You review your operations to validate the data assumption. One of the things I talked about earlier is it's a data-driven organization, or world even. And many times it's absolutely incorrect. How do you measure management skill levels and commitment? That's something I mentioned about testing, but how do you do it about commitment? That's walking the floor with these individuals, sitting down across a table, one adult to another, asking tough questions. Why are things wrong here? Why isn't it working here? Most organizations, poor organizations that we go into, we find the problem is the manager. Well, you can put in all new processes you want, but if you don't fix that particular issue, it will not change. You need to develop and provide specific training based upon what you found. If it's skills, if it's street management, if it's office management, whatever the case may be, develop and provide that training at that particular vital unit. It has to involve leadership. How do you address performance successfully? What delivery skills do you need? And bottom line is you need to ensure accountability. And that's one of the most difficult things to do. We found all of us have seen poor managers who get promoted. That's something that starts at the top where you have to make a commitment to say that we're going to have to ensure that if the company spends these resources, they will in fact do what they've been trying to do. And again, we have a lot of resources available to help any delivery organization do that. We don't take over an operation, however, we can come in and help you. And it's private sectors, a lot of the private businesses, they hire consultants or contractors to come in. And again, we tie it into the bottom line. If we're not successful in helping you get better, you won't hire us back. So we're motivated to assist that. So please consider outside contract sources for support.